Titled Taylor Swift's heartbreaking moment in the Diddy Court trial, it was the day everyone had been waiting for the final verdict in the explosive Diddy Court trial. The courtroom was packed with journalists, celebrities, and curious onlookers. Among them was Taylor Swift, who had been unexpectedly pulled into the case after being mentioned in one of Diddy's wild allegations. It all started months ago when Diddy had accused Taylor of using her influence to manipulate the media for her own benefit while secretly plotting behind the scenes to bring him down. Taylor had remained silent throughout most of the trial, keeping her emotions hidden behind her usual composed exterior, but today the pressure was mounting. Her legal team had advised her to stay calm, but it was clear from her furrowed brow that the weight of the situation was beginning to take a toll as the judge, an imposing figure in black robes, called the court to order. The tension in the air was palpable. Diddy sat on one side of the room, stoic and confident, while Taylor sat cross, biting her lip, her fingers tightly gripping the armrests. After careful consideration of the evidence and testimonies presented, the judge began. This court has reached a decision. Taylor's heart raced. She hadn't prepared for this moment. She had been fighting so hard to clear her name, but nothing could fully prepare her for what was about to unfold. The judge continued, Taylor Swift, you are hereby found guilty of conspiring to manipulate public opinion and engage in actions that led to unnecessary media frenzy. Your role in this orchestrated campaign has been clear from the evidence presented. A sharp gasp echoed through the courtroom. Taylor's hands trembled as the room seemed to spin around her. Her world, once full of hit songs and sold-out tours, now seemed to collapse before her eyes. You will be sentenced to. The judge paused, and it felt like an eternity. The words that followed were like a dagger. A year of community service and a significant fine. For a moment T couldn't breathe. The weight of the sentence hit her like a tidal wave. Her chest tightened, her eyes blurred with tears. She had done everything she could to fight these accusations, but now it felt like the world was turning its back on her. Without warning, a gut-wrenching scream escaped her lips, a sound of sheer frustration, heartbreak, and disbelief. It was the kind of scream that came from deep within, one that no amount of fame or fortune could shield her from. Tears streamed down her face as she stood up abruptly, her body shaking with emotion. The cameras flashed incessantly, capturing every raw moment. She stumbled backward, her hands clutching her face, unable to stop the wave of tears. Her eyes locked on Diddy, who was now standing and staring at her, his expression unreadable. Taylor screamed again, louder this time, as if the court's judgment was not just an attack on her career, but on everything she had built, her reputation, her artistry, and her voice. The room fell into chaos, with whispers spreading like wildfire. Taylor, usually the composed and graceful figure, was now an emotional wreck in front of the world. Her lawyer rushed to her side, trying to calm her down, but it was clear that nothing could take away the pain she was feeling in that moment. Taylor, it's going to be okay, her lawyer said gently, trying to hold her steady, but it wasn't okay. The verdict had shattered her, and for the first time in a long while Taylor Swift was truly at a loss as the court erupted into confusion. Her sobs echoed in the silence. This wasn't the end of her story, she knew, but it was a chapter she would never forget, and in that courtroom she realized the true cost of being caught in the crossfire of fame, where sometimes even the strongest voices could be silenced by a single devastating sentence. Titled Taylor Swift's emotional breakdown at Diddy's court trial. It was an afternoon that would be forever etched into the headlines. The world was already on edge with it. The spectacle that was the Diddy Court trial, a saga filled with accusations, drama, and legal wrangling, but no one could have anticipated the unexpected turn that would involve one of the most beloved pop stars in the world, Taylor Swift. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. The trial had been long and exhausting, with sensational accusations flying between Diddy, the music mogul, and his former associates. Taylor Swift had been called as a key witness, having been unknowingly caught in a whirlwind of legal battles and media frenzy when her name surfaced in the proceedings. Her involvement had been simple at first, a collaboration gone a missed opportunity, but as the case unraveled, Taylor found herself painted as a central figure, accused of manipulating the situation to her advantage. The accusations were outrageous, and although she had been confident that the truth would prevail, doubts began creeping into her mind as the trial wore on. On the faithful day of the sentencing, Taylor sat nervously in the defendant's section. Her blonde hair, usually a beacon of calm, seemed to weigh heavily on her shoulders today. Beside her, her team of high-powered attorneys whispered frantically, trying to predict the outcome, but even they seemed uncertain as the judge finally stood to deliver the verdict. Taylor's heart raced. The room went silent. Miss Swift, the judge began, glancing over his notes with a stern look, you stand accused of conspiring with Diddy In a scheme to manipulate the media for personal gain, you are charged with obstructing justice and undermining the integrity of the music industry. The court has considered all the evidence, and we have reached a decision. Taylor's hands began to shake. She clutched the armrest of her seat, feeling her stomach twist into knots. The media cameras flashed from every angle, the weight of their lenses bearing down on her. Her fans, who had always stood by her, were watching with bated breath, praying that this would be another case where she would triumph. But the judge's next words shattered her world. Miss Swift, you are hereby sentenced to a fine of $2 million, and you were barred from working with any music moguls for the next 5 years. A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. Taylor's breath caught in her throat, her eyes wide with disbelief. The shock coursed through her veins, and for a moment, the world seemed to spin. The weight of the sentence hit her like a sledgehammer. She had never imagined that her career would come to a screeching halt like this. 5 years without collaborating with any of the industry's heavyweights. The ramifications were unimaginable. Her composure, usually unshakable, cracked. Tears welled up in her eyes, and before she could stop herself, it choked. SB escaped her lips. She buried her face in her hands, her chest heaving as the reality of the sentence set in. The courtroom gasped in unison as Taylor stood up, her body trembling. Her attorneys rushed to her side, but she pushed them away. Her eyes were wild and her voice broke as she screamed, "No, this isn't fair. I didn't do anything wrong." Her voice echoed through the sterile courtroom, filled with desperation and hurt. The harsh words of the sentence had pierced through her, and for the first time in her life Taylor Swift felt utterly powerless. Her outburst sent ripples through the room. Her fans in the gallery began to murmur, some shouting words of encouragement while others were too stunned to speak. Diddy, sitting across the room, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of guilt and indifference. Though they had once been allies, this trial had destroyed any semblance of friendship between them. The judge banged his gavel, attempting to restore order, but it was clear that Taylor had lost all sense of control. She was escorted out of the courtroom in a haze, the cameras flashing relentlessly as she was led down the steps. As the doors closed behind her, the world outside erupted into a frenzy of speculation. Back at her hotel later that evening, Taylor collapsed on the couch, the weight of the day's events overwhelming her. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts scattered. How had it all come to this? How had her career, her name, her reputation been dragged into this mess? She had always been the girl who wrote songs about heartbreak, about standing up for herself, about finding the strength to move on. But now, in the face of this monumental loss, she wasn't sure where to turn. For the first time in years, Taylor Swift didn't have the answers. Title: Taylor Swift's shocking outburst at Diddy's court trial. *, it was a day that no one expected. Taylor Swift, the beloved pop sensation known for her eloquent lyrics and poised public image, was reduced to tears and screams in the courtroom. The atmosphere inside the grand courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. The case had taken a dramatic turn. Everyone from fans to fellow celebrities to media outlets were watching closely as Diddy's high-profile trial reached a crucial moment. The prosecution had been relentless, and the courtroom was filled with a palpable tension as they finally laid out their closing arguments. The shocking news had come earlier. That morning, Taylor Swift, a key witness in the trial, had been called to testify regarding her involvement in an unexpected business deal with Diddy, one that was rumored to have gone terribly wrong. Details of the deal were sealed, but rumors had been swirling for weeks. Now the moment of truth had arrived. As Taylor stood nervous but composed at the witness stand, she tried to maintain her usual grace, her bright blue eyes scanning the room, her long blonde hair cascaded around her shoulders as she gave a calm answer to a final question from the prosecution. But when the judge called for her to step back, the courtroom grew silent. Taylor Swift, the judge's voice boomed, "You are hereby sentenced to 100 hours of community service effective immediately for your role in facilitating